You might think your jeans are just fashion, but they're actually one of the most powerful symbols of rebellion, class, culture, and capitalism. Your jeans weren't born in a fashion house. They were born in the dirt. It all started in 1873, in the heart of the American West. Levi Strauss, a German immigrant selling fabric and dry goods in San Francisco, teamed up with a tailor named Jacob Davis. Why? Because gold miners kept ripping through their pants. Davis had a simple solution: reinforce the stress points with metal rivets. They patented the design, and the blue jean was born. But here's what no one tells you. Those first jeans were never meant to be cool. They were made for survival. Heavy denim, copper rivets, zero style, all function. They were built for men swinging pickaxes, hauling timber, laying railroads. Jeans weren't a fashion statement. They were a lifeline, the fabric. It wasn't even American. It came from a French town called Nimes, Serge Denim, which later became Denim. And that signature indigo color? It didn't just look good. It hid dirt, grease, and sweat. Every detail was about toughness. And they weren't blue just for aesthetics. Indigo dye didn't penetrate the cotton fiber, meaning it faded with wear, showing the marks of labor, time, and effort. Each pair became personal, weathered by the life of the person wearing it. By the 1890s, Levi's had become the uniform of the working man. Cowboys wore them, railroad workers wore them. If you were building America, you were probably wearing jeans. No brand campaign, no celebrity endorsements, just raw grit and word of mouth. And while East Coast elites wore suits and silk, the West wore denim. The blue jean quietly became a symbol of the American frontier, rugged, tough, and unapologetically real. No one could have guessed that these dirty, functional pants would one day walk red carpets and sell for thousands. But back then, they weren't chasing fashion. They were chasing gold. This wasn't the birth of a trend. It was the start of a revolution. By the early 1900s, jeans had already won over the American West. But what came next? Total domination of the American workforce. This was the era of industry. Steel, oil, railroads. Skyscrapers were rising. Roads were being paved. America was building itself from the ground up. And at the center of it all, the blue jean. Railroad workers, factory men, lumberjacks, every hard job had one thing in common: denim. Why? Because nothing else could survive the grind. Jeans became more than clothing. They became armor for the working class. Levi's kept innovating, but now they had competition. Lee and Wrangler entered the game, each brand trying to out-tough the other. Lee invented the first zipper fly jeans in the 1920s. Wrangler began designing specifically for rodeo cowboys. The race was on. These weren't just jeans anymore. They were tools, essential gear for survival. And they were evolving fast. Different cuts for different jobs, reinforced seams, tougher weaves. Brands weren't just selling pants, they were solving problems. And then came the Great Depression. By the 1930s, millions were jobless, but those lucky enough to work were still wearing denim. Photos from that era show it all. Dust-covered farmers, factory men, oil rig workers, all in jeans. The blue jean became a silent symbol of survival. It didn't matter how bad things got, jeans endured. But here's what made it historic. These pants created a shared identity. If you worked with your hands, you wore denim. It crossed state lines, racial lines, class lines. Jeans were the great equalizer, and no marketing campaign created that. The people did. And when the government funded New Deal construction jobs, guess what workers wore to build roads, bridges, and dams? Denim. It became woven into the literal foundation of the country. Meanwhile, magazines back east looked down on denim as dirty or low class. But out in the real world, jeans were a badge of honor. They weren't just tough, they were true. So while America struggled to stay on its feet, denim quietly became the most trusted uniform in the country. It wasn't stylish, it wasn't trendy, but it was real, and that made it unstoppable. By the 1940s, denim was already a staple for the American worker, but no one saw what was coming next. Jeans were about to go from job sites to movie screens. It started during World War II. American soldiers wore denim off-duty, and when they were stationed overseas, the locals noticed. In Europe and Asia, denim started gaining quiet respect. The blue jean was now global, but back home, The real transformation happened in Hollywood. In 1953, Marlon Brando stepped onto the screen in The Wild One, wearing a leather jacket, boots, and cuffed jeans. A year later, James Dean did it in Rebel Without a Cause. That was it. Game over. Suddenly, jeans weren't just for workers. They were for outsiders, rebels, troublemakers, the kids who didn't follow rules. If your parents wore suits, you wore denim. It was the ultimate act of quiet defiance, and schools hated it. Across America, high schools and colleges banned jeans, calling them inappropriate and disrespectful. They weren't afraid of the fabric. They were afraid of what it stood for: independence, rebellion, identity. That's when denim crossed from function to philosophy. Jeans became the unofficial uniform of the teenager. For the first time, youth culture had its own look, its own voice. You didn't have to speak. Your jeans spoke for you. Even Hollywood costume designers leaned in. Denim became shorthand for cool, tough, and untamed. You weren't just wearing pants. You were making a statement. And that statement was loud. Levi's didn't pay for this attention. No brand did. It was the movies and the youth watching them that made jeans cool. When James Dean leaned against a wall in Rebel Without a Cause, wearing that effortless combination of white tee, boots, and denim, he sparked something. Teens everywhere copied Dean's look, not because it was trendy, but because it meant something deeper. It was a subtle yet bold rebellion against the rigid norms of the era. I don't care what society expects. I wear what I want. That was the silent cry beneath the denim. And that one look, it lit a cultural fire. Suddenly, wearing jeans became more than a style choice. It was rebellion wrapped in cotton. It stood for something bigger than aesthetics. For the first time, fashion wasn't just about following trends. It was about rejecting them. Clothes gave voice to teenage frustration, independence, and identity. Jeans weren't just part of the outfit, they were the message. At the same time, denim ads started targeting teenagers directly. It wasn't about durability anymore. It was about attitude, edge, and energy. Brands began tapping into the heartbeat of youth culture. Ads were louder, bolder, unapologetic. The tone shifted from practical to powerful. Models were younger, the poses were freer, and the vibe screamed confidence. Jeans became a symbol of freedom, individuality, and not giving a damn about fitting in. The same workwear that once lived in the shadows had stepped into the spotlight. Magazines tried to define the look. Fashion houses didn't know what to make of it. But teenagers? They didn't need an explanation. They weren't just pants anymore. They were power. They were pride. They were personal. And by the 1960s, jeans had taken on a new role. No longer just fashion or rebellion, they became a full-blown political statement. This was the era of civil rights marches, anti-war protests, and the rise of the counterculture. Streets were filled with voices demanding justice, peace, and change. And woven into those moments, on bodies, on stages, in crowds, was denim. Students burning draft cards, activists standing firm against segregation, musicians singing truth to power. They all wore jeans. Not because it looked cool, but because it represented something much bigger: solidarity, resistance, and authenticity. The blue of the denim became as symbolic as any flag or banner. Wearing jeans in the 60s wasn't about fashion. It was about declaring independence from a broken system. You were saying, I don't belong to your rules. I belong to something real. Denim became the uniform of the counterculture. Hippies, beatniks, feminists all gravitated to it. Why? Because jeans didn't discriminate. Rich or poor, black or white, famous or unknown, it didn't matter. In denim, you were equal. And then came the music. Bob Dylan, Janis Joplin, the Rolling Stones. They didn't just wear jeans, they lived in them. Woodstock? A sea of denim under the sun and mud. No stylists, no fashion labels, just raw, unfiltered identity. Jeans became the sound of rebellion, loud, messy, and real. Even on college campuses, jeans became a battleground. Ivy League institutions tried banning them. Politicians mocked them, but students kept wearing them. Every attempt to suppress denim only made it stronger. Meanwhile, brands like Levi's caught on. They stopped making just workwear. They started crafting identity, bell-bottoms, distressed styles, embroidered pockets. Jeans weren't just built to last, they were built to speak. Torn knees, protest, Painted pockets? Personality. Every rip, every patch told a story. Protesters wore jeans like armor. They stitched peace signs, slogans, and symbols onto jackets. Every thread was a piece of resistance. For peace, for voice, for change. Globally, the message echoed. In the Soviet Union, jeans were banned for being too Western, but people smuggled them in, paying hundreds for a single pair. Why? Because wearing jeans behind the Iron Curtain wasn't just a fashion risk, it was revolutionary. It was a way of saying, I see the world. I want more. By the end of the 1970s, denim had crossed every boundary: class, culture, country. It wasn't just American anymore. It belonged to the world. It wasn't just fabric. It was power. It didn't need a voice. It was one. By the 1980s, jeans weren't just a symbol of rebellion anymore. They were a global obsession. The gritty, counterculture roots still lingered beneath the fabric, but something had changed. Denim had gained swagger. It was loud, proud, and unapologetically stylish. What once whispered rebellion now shouted attitude. This was the decade jeans got dressed up, strutted into the spotlight, and demanded to be seen. Denim didn't just crash the fashion world, it walked the runway. High fashion met blue-collar grit. Brands like Calvin Klein, Guess, Versace, and Diesel stepped in and rewrote the rules. No longer were jeans just for the rebels and rockers. They were now for the glamorous, the elite, the fashion-forward. Moody black and white ads graced glossy magazines. Models with smoky eyes and fierce poses sold more than denim. They sold a lifestyle. Tailored fits, bold cuts, and that unmistakable confidence became the new aesthetic. One Calvin Klein ad in 1980, featuring a then 15-year-old Brooke Shields, changed everything. With a single line, "Nothing comes between me and my Calvins," she ignited a media storm. Critics called it scandalous. Youth called it iconic. It wasn't just a tagline. It was a cultural reset that merged sex appeal with self-expression. Suddenly, jeans weren't just clothes. They were aspiration. They were about how you looked, how you felt, and most importantly, how you wanted the world to see you. The logo stitched on the back pocket became a status symbol. Owning the right pair of jeans wasn't just fashion, it was personal branding. Then came the 90s, and denim evolved once again. This time, music wasn't just background noise, it was the driver. Hip-hop, with its explosive rise, took denim back to the streets. Artists like Tupac, Biggie, TLC, and Aaliyah turned oversized jeans, rugged denim jackets, and all-jean ensembles into the new cool. It was bold, raw, and deeply connected to culture. At the same time, the grunge movement, led by bands like Nirvana, made denim look rough, worn, and unapologetically unpolished. Flannels, faded jeans, and combat boots defined a generation that rejected perfection. No matter the genre, denim kept speaking. Even in high fashion, the voice of the street echoed. From baggy to shredded, from vintage to custom, jeans continued to represent something real. They said, "I make the rules. I tell the story." Demand skyrocketed across the globe. Levi's had planted its flag in over 100 countries. Designer denim became a billion-dollar industry. Brands competed fiercely, not just for sales, but for cultural relevance. And then came the disruptors, fast fashion giants like Zara, H&M, and Topshop. They didn't just follow trends, they accelerated them. What was once exclusive to the runway could now be bought at the mall. Suddenly, jeans were everywhere. On billboards, on TV, in music videos, and in school hallways. Celebrities wore them to parties, kids wore them to class, and moms wore them to work. Jeans were both status and staple. Everyone had a pair, but how you wore them? That was your signature. And that's the magic. Jeans kept reinventing themselves without ever losing their essence. By the 2000s, denim had reached legendary status. It wasn't just a cultural icon anymore. It had become a global economic powerhouse. The denim industry was now worth over $90 billion, stretching from high-end fashion houses to budget-friendly chains. Jeans were a great equalizer, worn by CEOs and students, actors and athletes, the rich and the working class. Everyone wore denim. Everyone needed denim. But with all this success came new problems. As demand surged, fast fashion began to dominate. Chains like Forever 21, Mango, and H&M flooded the market with trendy styles at record speed. The traditional fashion cycle, once seasonal, was now weekly. Jeans that once took months to design and craft were being mass-produced in days. The goal wasn't just to meet demand, it was to overwhelm it. But behind the price tags, a darker story unfolded. The environmental cost of denim was staggering. One pair of jeans could require up to 1,500 gallons of water to produce. Factories in developing countries dumped chemical dyes into rivers. Labor conditions were harsh, wages were low, workers' health was at risk, and suddenly, this symbol of freedom and self-expression was leaving a heavy footprint on the planet. Consumers began to notice. Questions started surfacing. Where were their jeans made? Under what conditions? Was style worth the damage? Legacy brands like Levi's took notice. They began fighting not just for market share, but for their legacy. Eco-friendly denim lines emerged, featuring organic cotton, sustainable dyes, water recycling, and laser distressing instead of chemical washes. Sustainability wasn't just a trend, it was a necessity. At the same time, new names entered the scene. Brands like Nudie Jeans, Everlane, and Outland Denim built their identities around ethics. They promised fair labor, reduced impact, and transparency. Their jeans weren't just products, they were promises. Customers weren't just buying denim, they were buying values. Once again, denim adapted, not by forgetting its past, but by facing its future. On the style front, things were shifting rapidly. The 2000s belonged to the skinny jean, tight, sleek, and body-hugging. They were everywhere. Celebrities strutted them on red carpets. Musicians wore them in music videos, and fashion bloggers showed them off in early Instagram posts. Skinny jeans weren't just a trend. They were the uniform of a digital-first generation. Every glossy magazine cover and YouTube fashion haul praised their versatility. But by the time the 2010s rolled in, a new wave of styles began to reclaim the spotlight. High-waisted fits came back strong. Vintage aesthetics surged. Mom jeans made an ironic, yet powerful return. Raw denim, with its sturdy feel and untouched character, was suddenly cool again. The denim cycle didn't stop spinning, it just spun faster. Every few years brought a new shape, a new vibe, a new expression. From ankle crops to flares, from stonewash to selvedge, the silhouettes evolved, but the essence stayed rooted. Through it all, one truth remained. Jeans were essential. No matter the season or social shift, denim stayed in the mix. It wasn't just fashion, it was foundational. It lived at the intersection of utility and expression, culture and commerce. A piece of denim could say more than an entire wardrobe. It was no longer just a garment. It was a global product, a cultural force, and a billion-dollar battlefield where heritage brands, boutique labels, and trend chasers all competed for relevance. Today, your jeans speak louder than ever. They're not just about style or function. They're about identity, who you are, what you believe, how you live. In the 2000s and 20s, denim has become hyper-personal. The question isn't what jeans you wear, it's why you wear them, how you wear them, and where they come from. Every stitch carries a story. Every fade is earned. Every choice matters. Sustainability is no longer an afterthought. It's the centerpiece. Shoppers want jeans that last longer, waste less, and do better for the planet. Fast fashion's fast pace has triggered a thoughtful counter-movement. Legacy names like Levi's have adapted, investing in recycled fibers, water-saving dye techniques, and climate-positive initiatives. Their message? Quality over quantity. Meanwhile, smaller brands are pushing the envelope. Companies like Mud Jeans and Redone promote rental models, resale platforms, and repair programs. Campaigns like Buy Less, Wear Longer aren't just slogans, they're shifts in mindset. Consumers are being invited into the process, not just to wear jeans, but to care for them. And then there's nostalgia, another force shaping the denim world. Vintage jeans are hot. Thrifted Levi's from the 80s, wide-leg 90s styles, or even raw heavyweight denim that harks back to your granddad's toolbox. These pieces aren't just about aesthetics. They carry memories. They have soul. They're a rebellion against disposable fashion and a love letter to lasting design. Social media has brought this all full circle. On TikTok, Gen Z mixes thrifted denim with runway blazers, crafting looks that ignore every traditional rule. On Instagram, influencers wear upcycled jeans stitched by local artisans. Pinterest boards are flooded with reimagined denim, from patchwork to painted. It's no longer about blending in. Denim, once again, is about standing out. Even the concept of who denim is for has changed. Gender norms are being redefined. Jeans are now genderless, fluid, inclusive, and made to fit everyone. Cuts and labels have become less important than comfort and expression. Anyone can wear anything, and that kind of freedom? That's the new denim revolution. Sure, styles still shift, from skinny to baggy, from flared to distressed, but at its core, denim holds strong. It's still a symbol of something deeper: independence, defiance, effort, and identity. Whether you wear them faded with frayed edges or crisp and pressed, your jeans tell your story. They reflect your values, your personality, your place in the world. And even after 150 years, the blue jean keeps evolving, reinventing, reimagining, reconnecting. It links generations and crosses boundaries because jeans aren't just a trend, they're a tradition. And somehow they still feel as fresh and powerful as day one. So next time you slip on your favorite pair of jeans, remember this. You're not just wearing denim, you're wearing 150 years of history. From gold mines to movie sets, protest marches to runway shows, jeans have been everywhere. They've survived wars, cultural revolutions, and shifting trends. And through it all, they've told one story louder than any marketing campaign ever could. Be real, be bold, be yourself. Jeans started as tough workwear for men chasing gold and became a global symbol of identity. They were banned in schools, smuggled across borders, and turned into billion-dollar fashion statements, worn by presidents and punks, cowboys and CEOs, activists and artists. And the craziest part? They've never stopped evolving. What other piece of clothing could do that? Your jeans are more than fabric. They're a canvas, a legacy, a connection to everyone who came before you, and a reflection of where you're going. Because at the end of the day, denim doesn't just fit your body, it fits your story. If this story changed the way you see your jeans, hit that like button, subscribe for more untold histories, and share it with someone who wears denim every day, because they deserve to know what they're really wearing.